How could we do this? We forgot him.
We didn't forget him. We just miscounted.
What kind of mother am I?
If it makes you feel any better, I forgot my reading classes.
There are 15 people in this house. You're the only one who has to make trouble.
I'm the only one getting dumped on.
You're the only one acting up. Now, get upstairs.
I am upstairs, dummy. Third floor? Everyone in this family hates me.
Then maybe you should ask Santa for a new family.
I don't want a new family. I don't want any family. Families suck. You know what the French call les incompetents. What?
Having a reunion or something?
Oh, no, my husband's brother transferred to Paris last summer, and both of his kids are still going to school here, and I guess he missed the whole family. He's giving us all this trip to Paris for the holidays so we can be together.
It's Christmas time. There's always a lot of burglaries around the holidays. So we're just checking the neighborhood to see if everyone's taking the proper precautions, that's all.
Just stay up there. I don't want to see you again for the rest of the night.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I don't want to see anybody else either.
I hope you don't mean that.
I hope I never see any of you jerks again.
Peter! We slept in! Oh, wait a minute. What time is it? Hey, Tom, hurry up, guys! Did we miss the flight?
No, you just made it.
Hello? The cars are still here. They didn't go to the airport. I made my family disappear.
Terrible feeling
You know what?
that we didn't do something.
What else could we be forgetting?
Kevin!
You're not at all worried about Kevin.
I'm calling from Paris. I have a son who's home alone.
He's so little and helpless.
The little child can use a couple of days in the real world.
Where's your mom? My mom's in the car.
Where's your father?
He's at work.
Where do you live?
I can't tell you that.
Why not?
Because you're a stranger.
All the houses with nobody home have automatic timers on their lights. Now! And that's the one, Marvin. That's the silver tuna. It's loaded.
You're not at all worried that something might happen to him.
No, we live in the most boring street in the United States of America, where nothing even remotely dangerous will ever happen. Period.
That house is the only reason we started working this block in the first place. Ever since I laid eyes on that house, I wanted it.
If I have to sell my soul to the devil himself, I am going to get home to my son.
Be a good little fella now and open the door.
You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?
Home Alone arrived on the big screen on the 16th of November 1990 in the USA and in the UK on the 7th of December. Produced on a small budget for its time of around $15 million, it went on to gross $476 million worldwide, becoming the second most popular film that year and a monster hit on videotape and Laserdisc. It had a Pepsi tie that dominated adverts at the time and promotions on the VHS. You too can piss the bed like Fuller by drinking too much Pepsi. It spawned 4 sequels and a wealth of video games, and today Home Alone is very much a part of pop culture and is on every year for the Christmas holiday season. Chris Columbus directed the movie, best known then for writing The Goonies and Gremlins and directing Adventures in Babysitting. The success of Home Alone really catapulted his career in directing, and he found further success with Home Alone 2, Mrs. Doubtfire, 9 Months, and the first 2 Harry Potter movies. The film was produced and written by John Hughes, who made a big name for himself directing movies such as The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Uncle Buck. John had become one of the most successful comedy writers and directors of the 80s, and Home Alone would become his biggest hit. The main person who came to everyone's attention thanks to the film was Macaulay Culkin, who became a household name overnight and a superstar. At the height of his fame, he was regarded as the most successful child actor since Shirley Temple. However, despite its financial success, the critics weren't too keen on it, getting a thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert, but the reviews didn't harm its box office performance, and it defeated all the other comedies of that year. The story of Home Alone came about when John Hughes and his wife were making a list of things not to forget before they went on vacation. They chuckled at the idea of accidentally leaving their child home alone, which sparked the idea, and John had written a script within a week. Chris Columbus and his writing background was the ideal choice to direct Home Alone. John had enjoyed watching Adventures in Babysitting, and like this, the film was set in and around Chicago, capturing the suburban family environment of Hughes' other work. The script was first at Warner Brothers, but the budget increased, causing the studio to bow out 3 weeks before shooting commenced. Hughes then took the project to 20th Century Fox, where it was picked up by the new chairman of the studio, Joe Roth. Whilst John Hughes' previous scripts dealt with teenagers and their problems, Home Alone became a film to feature younger characters, so he suggested to Columbus that they cast Macaulay Culkin in the main lead, because of his experience with the child actor while shooting Uncle Buck. At first, Columbus didn't want to cast him as he wanted to find a new actor to take on the role, but after seeing hundreds of potential kids during the casting process, he realised Culkin was absolutely perfect for the part. Macaulay had the experience of working on film, but also demonstrated that he could look after himself, which was key for the characteristics of Kevin. They started shooting in February of 1990 and was restricted to the working times of Culkin due to his age. He could only work until 10 PM, which caused scheduling and shooting problems for the crew, as there were many nighttime scenes. If things ran over, they could no longer use Macaulay, so the setups had to be planned carefully. The now famous house Kevin lived in is located in the village of Winnetka in Illinois. The kitchen in the film was shot in the house, along with the main staircase, basement, attic and most of the first floor landing. The house's dining room and all the downstairs rooms, excluding the kitchen, were duplicated on a soundstage to allow more room for equipment and crew. I remember not long ago seeing on Facebook the house was up for sale. Sadly, I didn't have over $1.5 million on me, but I would love to own that house. Now, the cast of Home Alone is pretty big, but the majority are only minor supporting characters, such as Kevin's relatives. So for this video, I'm going to focus on the characters everyone is familiar with. We obviously have Macaulay Culkin as Kevin McAllister, the troublesome kid who is left home alone and has to defend his house. Macaulay, as mentioned earlier, became a superstar overnight. He couldn't walk down the streets without being mobbed by his fans. He became friends with Michael Jackson and appeared in the music video Black and White. However, his overwhelming success and wealth led to problems within his family, and after a number of mildly successful films, Getting Even with Dad, The Pagemaster and Richie Rich, all released in 1994, Macaulay quit acting for a long time. He did come back and do a few smaller roles and lower budget movies, but in more recent years he has been battling drug addiction and thankfully seems in far better health now. Currently he mainly focuses on his music career with his band The Pizza Underground. Macaulay's brother Kieran also stars in Home Alone as Kevin's cousin Fuller. Kieran continued acting and starred in Father of the Bride 1 and 2, Nowhere to Run, and more recently in the 2010 film Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and the TV series Fargo. Catherine O'Hara plays Kate, Kevin's mum. Catherine started her career in comedy, and before Home Alone she was best known for her role in Beetlejuice, playing Winona Ryder's bitchy stepmom. She would work again with Tim Burton in The Nightmare Before Christmas and Frankenweenie. The late John Hurd plays Peter, Kevin's father. John had a career in film and TV, but his most memorable role was playing Peter in Home Alone 1 and 2. Sadly, he passed away in July of this year at 72 years old. Whenever I watch this film, I think to myself, John does look a bit like Bruce Willis. Joe Pesci plays Harry, who masquerades as a police officer at the beginning of the film to gain knowledge of the homeowners and their security so he can rob them once they go on holiday for Christmas. Joe wanted to explore different genres as he had been known for playing tough guys and gangster-like characters, and Joe was happy to take the part. He did find it difficult not to swear on set, as this was a kid's film. Daniel Stern plays Marv, Harry's sidekick. He is the dim-witted one of the pair and a bit childlike. He likes to flood the house after robbing them to leave his calling card referring to him and Harry as the Wet Bandits. He was the first choice to play the part, but apparently he was too pricey, so they approached another actor, but he failed the screen test. So they went back to Daniel and agreed to the fee he wanted. His now famous scream he apparently copied from the classic Hitchcock film Psycho. The late Robert Blossom plays Marley, the old man who salts the streets. He is feared by the younger kids due to a rumour surrounding his past. Kevin is terrified of him and tries to avoid him at all costs. The character of Marley wasn't in the original script, but was later added to give a further sentimental side to the plot and gave Kevin another person to interact with. Devin Rattray plays Buzz, Kevin's older brother who gives Kevin a hard time. He owns the tarantula that's running loose around the house. Devin seemed to do well being cast as a bully and also starred in Little Monsters alongside Daniel Stern. Devin has continued to act but also moved into producing music, very much like Macaulay Culkin. And finally we have a cameo role for the late great John Candy, playing Gus Polinski, who is part of a band who are travelling to their next gig, but their flight was cancelled and they are now travelling by road and offer Kate a lift back to Kevin. John had worked with Hughes on Planes, Trains and Automobiles and Uncle Buck. Around this time his career was on the downward slide and sadly he passed away in 1994. The film opens in a wealthy but dull neighbourhood in Chicago, where nothing ever happens until now. The McAllister family are preparing to spend Christmas in Paris, having a final meal together before they head out early the next morning. The young son of Peter and Kate, 8-year-old Kevin, is being mocked by siblings and cousins and feels like no one likes him. A fight with his older brother Buzz results in Kevin spending the night on the 3rd floor of the house as punishment, where he angrily wishes that his family would disappear. Overnight, heavy winds cause damage to power lines, causing the alarms in the house to reset, and the entire family oversleep. In the confusion and rush to leave for the airport, Kevin is accidentally left behind. Kevin wakes up to find the house empty, and thinking his wish has come true. He is now over the moon to have full freedom of the house. His mother Kate discovers mid-flight that Kevin is missing, and upon arriving in Paris, the family discovers that all flights for the next 2 days are booked. Kevin soon realises being on his own isn't all it's cracked up to be, and becomes frightened by his next door neighbour, Old Man Marley, who is rumoured to have murdered his family with a snow shovel back in the 50s. Kevin and his house is also under threat from the Wet Bandits. Harry and Marv, a pair of burglars who have been breaking into other vacant houses in the neighbourhood and have targeted the McAllister's house. Harry is perplexed to see the house occupied, having earlier impersonated a police officer to gain information on the residents' Christmas plans. However, having learnt Kevin is home alone, the pair plot to break in the house that night. Little do they know, Kevin has set up a number of tricks to ruin their plans. Legendary composer John Williams provides his talents on Home Alone. The film originally had Bruce Broughton slated to compose the score, as Columbus was impressed with his work on the young Sherlock Holmes. But due to a dispute with Disney, as he had agreed to work on The Rescuers Down Under, they had to find a replacement. Chris Columbus reached out to John Williams, thinking John would never do it. Williams was a bit burnt out at the time and was taking a break between jobs, but having watched a rough cut, he loved the movie and thought it had the magic of E.T. and gladly took the offer. John said he felt he would often not get asked by some filmmakers to work on their movies because they thought he would charge too much, but John felt the material was more important than the money and gladly jumped onto Home Alone due to faith in the film. Like all of John's work, the score is superb and very memorable. As soon as you hear the opening theme, you instantly know it's Home Alone. The film captures the essence of Christmas but provides modern sounds to match Kevin's energy and youth. The standout piece for me was when he realised he was running out of time and had to get home quick to set up the traps. You have a heroic kind of march mixed with familiar Christmas motifs that work really well together. Also, during the tender moments between Kevin and his mum at the end, John Williams succeeds in pulling all your heartstrings in his usual fashion that work really well for me. The themes here are very recognisable in the music used in his next movie, Hook. During the late 80s, perhaps around The Witches of Eastwick, John Williams' music took on an orchestral sound that causes familiar motifs to be heard in scores such as Home Alone, Hook, Harry Potter, and even Rey's theme in Star Wars The Force Awakens. The Home Alone score was nominated for an Academy Award but lost out to Dances with Wolves. The song Somewhere in My Memory, which appears in full when Kevin walks home feeling alone, but is featured in fragments throughout the score, was also nominated for an award but lost out to Dick Tracy. The song was written by Leslie Brickus, who also wrote Can You Read My Mind for Superman the movie. The soundtrack was released on CD in 1990, containing just under 1 hour's worth of music. Come 2010, it was expanded and remastered with a further 20 minutes of music. Then it got another release in 2015 with even more music. Thankfully, the most recent release is still available from a number of websites and can be purchased for a reasonable price. If you're not interested in physical media anymore, you can also get the original album release from iTunes. Seeing video games based on movies was pretty much common in the 1990s, and most summer and Christmas big releases had some sort of video game tie-in. Home Alone arrived on the NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, PC, Amiga, Mega Drive, Master System, Game Gear, and in 2006 a version for the PlayStation 2. Now all the original releases vary in graphic quality. The SNES, Game Boy and computer versions have mini cutscenes to set up the story, but you only defend your house in those versions, whilst the Sega releases require you to defend the entire neighbourhood, bar the Master System version, which is a bland platformer where you just save the valuables and no setting up traps. All the games have a restricted runtime in which you have to stop the Wet Bandits from stealing everything and when the police arrive. Back in the day, different developers handled the conversions to the variety of gaming platforms, so what you got on say the Super Nintendo game may be totally different on the Mega Drive. If you were a Mega Drive owner, you were in luck, because this version was far superior to all the other releases. You can make your own weapons by combining different items, you can leave the house and defend the neighbourhood, thus offering more gameplay, and overall the graphics are far more impressive, despite the majority of the game's soundtrack being grating to hear. This is the one I played a lot as a kid and recently did a run through on it for my Let's Play channel. I thought the Super Nintendo one would probably be identical to the Mega Drive game, but it's a far weaker version with terrible graphics. If you browse the long plays on the Amiga game, people can complete it in like 13 minutes. It's ridiculous. Now the Mega Drive game is not brilliant and very average, but perfectly playable. If you look back at the reviews at the time for all the conversions, they certainly weren't praised by the gaming media, and were just considered another bland video game tie-in to a movie. In 2006, for some reason, they decided to produce a game for the PS2. It was published by Blast Entertainment Limited and only released in Europe. A top-down game where you can choose from 4 playable characters: Carl, Carly, Kelly or Kevin. The game features 10 levels and the player's goal is to use objects to defeat the wet bandits from attempting to break into the house. The game was panned by reviews at the time, citing it was incredibly dull, and to be honest looks like a mobile game. Also, it's a multiplayer game, defeating the whole idea of you being home alone. The PlayStation 2, like the Nintendo Wii, had a lot of shovelware titles, cheap nasty games that were sold for affordable prices. I would suggest playing the Mega Drive / Genesis version if you want to capture some of the magic of the film. Because Home Alone was a huge success, there has been 4 sequels to date, 2 released theatrically and 2 direct to TV. Home Alone 2 came out in 1992 and a third entry came out in 1997, which ditched the original cast and replaced them with new characters, but did have John Hughes return to write it. 2002 there was a made-for-TV movie that has some of the original characters from the first 2 movies, but it doesn't fall into the same continuity, and the 5th entry was called The Holiday Heist, another made-for-TV production that arrived in 2012. Now all these sequels have been panned more so than the original 2 with Macaulay Culkin, but I'm not going into detail beyond Home Alone 2, as they follow a different path and don't retain the original cast and characters. Home Alone 2 Lost in New York was very successful and achieved similar numbers to the original, but fell short a bit, which was considered normal at the time, as this was still a period of diminishing returns for sequels in the movie business. The critics were just as mixed on this one as the original. The screenplay basically copies the first movie but with everything on a bigger scale. Kevin, instead of being home alone, gets lost in New York, and coincidentally the wet bandits who have escaped the law bump into Kevin and attempt to get revenge. Home Alone 2 retains some good comedy, mainly thanks to Daniel Stern, who yet again provides one of the funniest screams in film. Joe Pesci is still as comically evil, and Tim Curry is the brilliant uptight hotel manager, but ultimately it's very repetitive and a bit dull. Even as a kid I found it a bit tiresome, and if I had the choice I would always watch the first movie. I do remember many kids wanting to get hold of the talk boy Kevin used in the film when it came out. Well, kids I knew wanted it for like a month, then everyone forgot about it. It was originally conceived as a non-working prop for the film, where Kevin can record sounds and manipulate them, and he uses it a couple of times in the movie. Tiger Electronics saw the potential in it and got it produced into a fully working device, and it sold well as a tie-in for the movie. Home Alone 2 has another great score by John Williams, but the script unfortunately doesn't have the charm and wit of the original. It's very clear the first movie was really a one-off kind of a deal, and maybe due to the rush to make a follow-up, a sequel was stretching it. Kevin is not home alone anymore and now just stranded in a big city, and it repeats the original ending, as he goes to his uncle's house and sets up more traps. Then you have the problem of saying, well, I've seen this all before. In the original he gives advice to the old man, and in this one helps out the pigeon lady who spends her time covered in bird shit. That's the inherent problem with sequels, you have to give the audience something different, but make it familiar. I'm sure the filmmakers didn't expect the first film to do so well, and the studio probably pressured them into doing a follow-up. It's not a bad film, but just a bit pointless and pushes the cheesy elements of the story a bit too much. Shut up, Mark! Home Alone came out when I was 8 years old. I didn't see it at the cinema, but was clearly aware of its popularity, and was desperate to watch it when it came out to rent. The early 90s were all about Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons and Home Alone for me. The character of Kevin does have similar traits to Bart Simpson. He's troublesome and talks back to people and is overly confident, so I suppose he's maybe the closest live action character to capture Bart Simpson. Even the old VHS tape for Home Alone had adverts for The Simpsons. It kind of seemed to fit. For most of us, Home Alone is part of the Christmas movie schedule. Everyone creates lists of films to watch, mainly consisting of Die Hard, Elf, Santa Claus the Movie, It's a Wonderful Life, Gremlins, Love Actually, one of the many adaptations of A Christmas Carol, and of course Home Alone. I think all of us had the thought of being home alone as a kid and what would happen. Well, most probably nothing. It would be uneventful and you would end up eating all the cereal, crisps or whatever you could find in the cupboard to survive. Or in my case, eat loads of peanut butter on toast, and filling the time playing video games. If, like in the film, the telephone lines were disconnected, you would just go pay your friends a visit. It seems that Kevin doesn't think of that idea, or maybe he doesn't really get on with many other kids. The character of Kevin is a bit inconsistent. He is completely self-centered and he appears totally useless, and doesn't know how to pack his own bag, but once his parents are gone, he quickly begins to show he can be responsible, goes shopping, does the washing, gives advice to an old man. If a little kid started giving advice to me, I'll tell him to shut up, and he can defend his house from burglars. This takes place over a couple of days. Macaulay Culkin at his age shows a lot of talent as an actor, and rightly deserved the success he achieved. Chris Columbus, like Steven Spielberg and Richard Donner, is very good at getting the best performances out of children. There are tons of kids in the McAllister family, and not one, I believe, gives a bad line or performance. Daniel Stern is definitely the highlight for me. Joe Pesci is brilliant, as he holds back from swearing and does his almost muttly mumble to stop himself from cursing every time he gets hurt. But Stern is superb at showing the pain he is put through, more so than Joe. He plays Marv as this charming childish buffoon. Daniel and Joe just work really well together, perfect chemistry. All the action and stunts really come across as this Warner Brothers cartoonish slapstick. These stunts are performed well to show you how much pain they are put through. The moment with the spider is the best part of the film for me. Daniel has the finest scream on film, and when he sees the spider on Pesci, the look on Joe's face is priceless, as he's about to get whacked with a crowbar to the chest. One bit I do like is when Kevin watches the gangster movie Angels with Filthy Souls. The filmmakers went to great efforts to recreate the illusion that it was shot in the 1940s by using black and white negative film and authentic items from that era. It works so well, and when I was a kid I thought it was a real film. As an adult watching Home Alone, I think to myself, why should I care about a spoilt little brat who is left home alone for a couple of days? As a kid you don't really pay attention to that aspect, you just imagine yourself being put in that situation and you let your imagination take over. The movie goes all in wanting you to care for him, and John Williams' score does eventually win you over. But Kevin's life is very comfortable, and the challenges he faces could be easily dealt with if he spoke to an adult for help. He has many opportunities to do so. One thing that only really occurred to me recently is that we never see Kevin's own bedroom. There is a quick shot near the beginning where he's talking to his older brother. We see bunk beds which may suggest Kevin shares the room with him, but we never see that room again as Kevin sleeps in his parents' room, and at the beginning Kevin spends his time on the 3rd floor, which to me seems like the best room in the house, easily the biggest bedroom. Nowadays the film would be undone by modern technology. If Kevin had a mobile phone he would just text his mum and say, "Help, I'm home alone." The plot just wouldn't work today unless you came up with a mad idea that resulted in modern tech being unavailable. The film is not certainly very realistic in any way. That was one of its major criticisms. For example, when the parents come home, his dad only finds Pesci's gold tooth. But wouldn't they also find the stairs covered in tar still, and the door handle most probably melted or warped? I don't think Kevin had the time to replace the door handle and get rid of the tar. How would he get rid of that anyway? We are missing a good old-fashioned cleaning montage somewhere. The film didn't go down too well with adults, but I don't think its major goal was to please them, but instead be something for younger kids and for the whole family to enjoy. The kids would like the character of Kevin and could imagine themselves being in this situation, and the adults would enjoy the slice of comedy from the adult characters. The film walks this fine line of pleasing a wide range of ages, which isn't easy to do. What the film successfully captures is that classic look of Christmas, very much like the ideal American celebration of the holiday season. It's that kind of Hallmark card design that I wish the UK would embrace come Christmas time. It's always done a little half-assed in England, well, in the town I live in anyway. In all movies set at Christmas, it bloody snows. Not in England. If you see a film set in London and it's snowing at Christmas, it's a monstrous lie. I'm looking at you, Bridget Jones's Diary. If you live up north or in Scotland, then fair dues, but down south, no way. In Home Alone, the photography is sublime, a lovely hazy look to it and warmth, especially when it comes to those sentimental moments. The tone of those emotional moments is a tad forced and cheesy, but movies set at Christmas get away with being a bit corny. Home Alone is certainly a film I look fondly upon, as it was part of my childhood. There is that nostalgic factor, but honestly I'm less fond of it now as a 35-year-old. But it still has its charm, a wonderful score and nice moments of humour. The jokes and gags still work. As with all movies primarily aimed at a younger audience, as an adult it doesn't quite work as well, but I would never dismiss it as silly or juvenile like most of the film critics at the time. The movie came out at the right time and found its audience, and has retained a strong fan base to this day.
Everything's full.
Everything's full.
I'm very sorry, but it is Christmas Eve.
May I help you get a hotel room in the city? Tomorrow afternoon, we can get you a flight to Chicago.
I can't wait that long. I have been awake for almost 60 hours. I'm tired and I'm dirty. I've been from Chicago to Paris to Dallas to... Where the hell am I?
Scranton.
I am trying to get home to my 8-year-old son. And now that I'm this close, you're telling me it's hopeless.
Excuse us. Alfred. Couldn't help but hearing you got a little bit of a dilemma there. Our flight was canceled, so we gotta drive. So, see the guy in the yellow jacket over there by the budget sign? He's gonna rent us a nice big van, and we're gonna drive to Milwaukee. Now, I heard you had some problems. You're getting to Chicago to see your kid or something?
My son, we left and he's there.
Oh, jeez. If you have to get to Chicago, we'll gladly drive you. It's on the way to Milwaukee.
You'd give me a ride?
Sure we will. Why not? You know, you gotta get home and see your kid.
A ride to Chicago?
Sure, you know, it's Christmas time.
Okay? We'll unload the van, we'll get a bite to eat, we'll come back about 9 o'clock. This way it's dark then. We know that you're in there, and that you're all alone.
Hello.
Why the hell did you take your shoes off?
Why the hell you dressed like a chicken?
I got it!
If you enjoyed the video, you can find more on my YouTube channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate through Patreon and receive monthly perks such as updates on the latest news on my channel, early access to reviews and commentaries before they go live on YouTube. Even the smallest donation can help keep this channel going. Thank you.